Revealed. The haunted rules of a retirement home for cursed monsters exposed the sinister secrets. It was a cold night when Sarah Johnson felt the air go still in the crumbling retirement home. An unsettling silence that wrapped around her like a wet blanket. Flickering fluorescent lights struggled to illuminate the common room, casting long shadows that jittered and danced across the peeling wallpaper. Whispers echoed in the corners, teasing her from the dark, warning her not to linger. Everywhere she looked, the decaying walls seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Locals said there were cursed souls trapped here, lost and angry, the kind that could turn sweet memories into frightening nightmares. As a single mother desperate to provide for her spirited 8-year-old daughter, Mia, Sarah had to endure this eerie place. She found solace in thinking about Mia's smile, bright as day, but the unsettling tales of this place haunted her. Unearthly sounds filled the air while she took inventory, and when a loud thud broke through the stillness from the resident's wing, her heart raced. No one should be wandering out there at this hour. Just then, fear gripped her tight. What if the tales were true? Please, not tonight, she whispered under her breath, her pulse quickening with each slow step toward the sound. The clattering faded into a menacing laugh, echoing through her mind. She hesitated, shaking her head as she recalled the dark stories swirling through town about the frail elders inside, claims of shadowy figures creeping behind windows, muffled screams disguising themselves as nightly whispers. But it wasn't long before she lost her resolve. As a nurse, she had responsibilities to uphold. Before she could reach the door, a movement caught her eye. It was her father, the man who had vanished from her life years ago, reeking of desperation and shadows, suddenly stood there, pale, gaunt, and not quite right. "Sarah, please," he said, voice cracking like dry leaves, "I need a place to stay." Stoled by memories of abandonment and pain, a wave of emotion surged through her. She wanted to scream, to push him away, to never face that darkness again. Instead, she stared blankly, torn apart by a desperate longing for family and the urge to protect Mia from harm. As days passed, Sarah could feel the air grow heavier. She heard whispers masked as laughter, felt pricks of icy dread crawl beneath her skin. Each night her father seemed to lose more of himself, talking to shadows that clung to the corners of his room. The other residents, once held in her heart as simple, frail beings, now twisted in her mind as potential harbingers of terror. They exchanged knowing glances, and she could swear their brittle hands pointed toward her father. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension peaked one particularly haunting night when she discovered a hidden room beneath the nursing home. Dim candlelight flickered off grotesque artifacts, memories of apparitions and strange rites. A blood-curdling realization clawed at her sanity. They had made a pact to stay youthful, tethered to darkness by their own desperate choices. Panic surged through Sarah as she ran up the stairs, her heart pounding in her ears. Her father's face swam into view, but not as the man she knew. "They want you to join us," he rasped, eyes hollow and cold. "You can't escape." The walls felt like they were closing in, shadows creeping ever closer. As she stared at her father, fear wrapped tightly around her throat. Would she find a way out, or would she be trapped in this nightmare forever? The air thickened with dread as whispers swelled into a cacophony of shadows. Hungry for a new soul, the darkness waited, ready to claim her. The air crackled with oppressive tension as Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she remained rooted to the floor. Shadows twisted like tendrils around her father, and she recoiled from the emptiness in his gaze. The laughter of the unseen echoed again, more sinister this time, wrapping around her like a noose. "Why are you like this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible against the rising tide of hysteria that surged through her. "They need you, Sarah," he croaked, inching closer, his skeletal fingers reaching out. You can help us, you can be one of us. The thought alone sent a wave of sickening dread crashing over her. He was no longer the man she had loved. The man she now faced was nothing but a vessel, a hollow shell bound to this wretched place. Panic clawed at her mind like a feral beast, a fight-or-flight instinct screaming, "Get out!" But something in her father's gaze made her pause. A flicker of love? A shadow of the man she used to know? Or just another trick of the dark? Heart pounding, she backed away. "No, this isn't you. You can fight it." His mouth twisted into a grin, one devoid of warmth, and the laughter of the shadows swelled, whispering promises of oblivion. "You don't understand, it's too late." The air shimmered around them, thickening as if to suffocate her. Sarah glanced back toward the corridor, the path out seemingly stretching into infinity, taunting her with its distance. Every instinct urged her forward, yet she sensed the eyes of the other residents upon her. They stood behind her father, watching with a mixture of hunger and something darker, a patient anticipation that gnawed at her sanity. "Sarah," the word dripped like poison from his lips. "You belong here, you've always belonged here." They were all monsters, trapped in their own skin, locked into a haunting pact just like him. And with that realization came a chilling awareness. What if she couldn't escape? What if she, like the residents, would soon wear that same empty gaze, her only thoughts consumed by shadow? "No!" she shouted, forcing herself to turn and run. Her feet flew over the cold floor, racing up the hallway against the chorus of whispers chasing her. She barely registered the shadows reaching out, clawing at her retreating figure, dark claws grasping for flesh and spirit alike. Suddenly, the fluorescent lights dimmed, flickering erratically as she dashed toward the exit, the path before her blurring into a maze of darkness and despair. "Get out! Get out!" echoed her frantic mind as she approached the heavy door. She surged forward, shoulder colliding with its frame. Could it hold? Would it give way to her desperate plea for salvation? A thunderous crash resonated behind her. Her heart raced as she swung the door open, praying for freedom. Just as she stepped over the threshold, she turned back, her father's anguished scream resonating in her ears, the growing cacophony of his twisted family closing in on her. "You can't escape us." In that moment, a tendril of shadow shot past her, grasping at her ankle. She stumbled, twisting to break free, but not before flinging a glance back at her father, his horrifying face twisted in pain. Was it regret? Was he begging her to return? With a final burst of adrenaline, she broke free, staggering into the night. But the shadows beckoned from the depths of the retirement home, their whispers sinking into her bones. As she ran, breathless under the moonlight, one chilling thought lingered behind her. She had escaped the building, but had she truly escaped it all? A shivering chill wrapped around her heart. The only way to protect Mia now was to uncover the truth hidden within those cursed walls. What other horrors awaited within? And what if the shadows were waiting for her to return, to reclaim what had been lost? The night air was thick with foreboding as Sarah stumbled through the empty streets, mind racing. The moon hung full, casting long shadows that seemed to leer at her, almost sentient in their malice. She knew she couldn't go back, yet every fiber of her being screamed the opposite. Her heart thrummed against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat urging her to move faster. What if they followed her? What if the hell she had escaped was only a taste of the nightmare that awaited her if she lingered? The whispers in her ears clawed at her thoughts. "You can't escape us." If only she could erase that voice. She had to warn Mia. The memory of her sister laughing innocently, oblivious to the darkness, flooded her with a pang of guilt. She was supposed to protect Mia, not drag her into the depths of that cursed place. But what would she say? "Hey Mia, our dad is a monster now, and those shadows know." She wouldn't say that. Not yet. The idea brought bile rising in her throat. The street lamps flickered around her as she turned into an alley, desperate to find a place where she could gather her thoughts. The alley was cramped, and the stench of decay and filth filled her lungs, but she didn't care. She pressed against the brick wall, eyes darting to the shadows that crept in the corners. as if ready to pounce. Panic bubbled under the surface as she struggled to compose herself. Breathe, focus. The reality of what had happened was too much to digest. She had seen her father, felt his cold, grasping hands. He was lost. I can't let this happen to Mia. The whisper turned into a desperate shout, echoing against the brick. Silence answered. A shiver crept along her spine. Was she truly alone? Or were they watching, stalking her through the night? The thought stuck in her mind like a splinter, and she closed her eyes tightly. She wouldn't let them take Mia. Feeling the weight of determination settle in her chest, she turned to leave the alley, when a soft rustling made her freeze. There it was again, something lingering in the darkness, accompanied by a familiar, twisted laughter. The hairs on her neck prickled. Sarah. The voice was low, seductive even, slinking through the air like smoke, wrapping around her like a lover's embrace. You can't avoid your fate, dear one. You belong with us. Heart hammering. She spun around to face the voice, but found only shadows. The laughter morphed into a chorus, chilling her bones with every echo, merging into one unsettling symphony that beckoned her back toward the retirement home. Join us, Sarah, we wait for you. No, she shouted, clutching her head, nails digging into her scalp. I want to go back. But doubts began to crawl up her legs, paralyzing her with uncertainty. What if she was too late? What if she already carried a part of that darkness within her? The question hung there, heavy and terrifying. She needed answers. She needed to know how to sever the connection, or risk becoming one with the shadows. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she scrolled for information about the retirement home's history, its residents, its past. It felt like searching through thick mud, only to uncover sharp, jagged stones. A rustle nearby caused her heart to leap into her throat again. But instead of panic, something else stirred inside her. Curiosity and dread intertwined. Adrenaline rushed through her as she began to step further out of the alley. I need to figure this out. I'll go back, she resolved, feeling the ache of purpose replacing the dread. With that, she took a deep breath. One final glance toward the distant, looming structure of the retirement home flashed through her mind. They were waiting, and she would have to face them all again. Before she turned to leave, a chilling thought stopped her dead. What if coming back meant more than exposing the truth? What if it meant unraveling a fate worse than death? She gripped her phone, her emotions igniting like dry timber. It was now or never. She had to know. What were they truly after? As she hurried toward the approaching morning light, the only thing louder than her heart was the echoing laughter in her ears, promising her that the game was far from over. The chill of dawn hung heavy as Sarah emerged from the alley, her breath visible in the cold air. The streets stretched before her, deceptively calm, but a storm brewed in her mind. She needed answers, and yet the weight of impending doom loomed over her. Each step felt labored, as if the shadows themselves clung to her ankles, begging her to turn back. The retirement home rose in the distance, a grotesque silhouette against the pale sky. Abandoning hope sounded easy, but her sister's face flickered in her memory, a vivid reminder of what was at stake. The deep, "Welcome back," from the shadows reverberated in her thoughts as she crossed the threshold of the old building, memories spilling forth. Every creak of the floor beneath her reminded her of what she'd fled. She pushed through the heavy door, gritting her teeth against the rising dread. Inside, darkness seeped into every corner, escaping the feeble daylight that dared to break through the grimy windows. Rooms lined the corridor like ominous tombs, their doors slightly ajar, inviting her to glimpse the horrors within. With every step, her heart raced, pounding against her ribs, echoing the whispers that taunted her. Sarah. Laughter lurked in the air, ghostly and familiar. She felt it braiding around her, like a noose. Was it really her? Or was it that voice she heard outside? She hesitated but pressed forward, drawn to a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, and a flickering light seeped through the gap. The closer she got, the more the murmurs intensified, a haunting chorus luring her closer. Peeking inside, She found a dimly lit room filled with scattered papers and old photographs. As she stepped over the threshold, the smell of mildew assaulted her senses. On a table in the center lay a stack of old records, the titles barely legible. Her breath hitched when she saw one labeled The Unraveling. Compelled by a force she didn't understand, she reached for the record. As her fingers grazed the cover, a sudden chill swept through the room, snatching the warmth from her skin. The laughter intensified, echoing off the walls, mischievous and cruel. "It's time to know," it hissed, intertwining with the pulsing thrum of her heart. All she could do was grip the edge of the table, knuckles white. "Stop," she shouted, her voice trembling. "I want to know the truth." The room fell silent, the atmosphere shifting ominously. The shadows swayed as if reacting to her demand, coalescing into grotesque shapes that just might be remnants of those trapped. The picture on the wall caught her eye, and she moved closer. It was an old photograph of the retired residents, her father among them. But something wasn't right. Their eyes gleamed with an unnatural light of hunger, the smiles too wide, too predatory. "Join us," the whispers echoed again, slithering through the air like serpents, wrapping around Sarah's throat. "No," she screamed, recoiling. Grabbing the record, she tossed it against the wall. The sound of shattering glass rang out, echoing through the silence. And then she felt it, the cold embrace of the presence swarming from every corner. It was feeding on her anger, her fear. They wanted her to say yes. But what would that mean? Breathless, she backed away, the laughter bubbling to a crescendo, blending into a chaotic symphony that clawed at her sanity. What if exposing the truth only handed those shadows more power? In the chaos, a sudden idea struck her. She had to turn their own game against them. She needed to search deeper. "I can't let them win," she thought, as fear morphed into resolve. With furrowed brows, she dashed to the beautiful but haunting front desk, a place that held keys to so many locked doors, both physical and metaphorical. But the energy shifted again, and she felt them closing in, hungry for her fear. "Sarah." The voice sent a jolt through her, freezing her in place. It was Mia. "Mia? Here? Help me." Panic shot through her, sharp and electric. Was her sister really here? The shadows danced with delight, their laughter swirling as Sarah turned towards the sound, heart pounding, ready to plunge deeper into darkness. What had she awakened in this cursed place? And would she be able to find Mia before the shadows consumed them both? Sarah spun around, searching for the source of Mia's frantic plea, her heart hammering in her chest. The air thickened with dread, pushing down on her shoulders like a weight. "Where are you?" she called, her voice quaking with fear. The laughter faded, leaving an eerie silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. "Over here, in the basement." Mia's voice was clearer now, laced with desperation. Yet the shadows whispered around Sarah, filling her ears with unsettling hisses. "Basement?" The word churned her stomach. The basement had always felt wrong, a place even the staff avoided. But Mia needed her. In a dizzying rush, Sarah bolted down the hallway. Each footstep sounded like thunder, reverberating off the walls, challenging the silence. The shadows flickered and shifted, twisting into grotesque forms that seemed to mock her courage. With every passing moment, the weight of their hunger grew heavier. She reached the door to the staircase leading down. Rusty hinges protested as she swung it open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit descent. The lights flickered, and the air was stale, filled with the scent of dampness and decay. "Sarah, please hurry." Mia's voice echoed softly, but it held a warning, a note of urgency that propelled Sarah forward. Heart racing, she started down the stairs, the darkness closing in around her. The walls seemed to breathe, in and out, alive and hungry. She instinctively glanced over her shoulder, half expecting to see the shadows pursuing her, clawing to snatch her back. Each step deeper into the abyss heightened her dread. Flickers of movement teased the corners of her vision, whispering entities watching, waiting to pounce. Sarah pressed forward, her resolve solidifying with each heartbeat. At the bottom, the basement sprawled like a forgotten grave, filled with old furniture covered in white sheets and remnants of the lives lost within these walls. The chilly air bit at her skin, but before she could take in her surroundings, a shattering scream cut through the quiet. Mia! Frantically, she rushed toward the sound, stumbling over a broken chair. As she turned the corner, she found Mia, her sister's wide eyes reflecting terror. Mia was backed into a corner, a figure looming before her, obscured in the semi-darkness. Mia! Sarah reached out, but a cold, unnatural laugh echoed through the basement. The figure stepped into a slant of light, revealing an impossibly thin man with pale, cracked skin and eyes that glowed an unsettling hue. "Welcome back, Sarah," he crooned, his voice like gravel scraping against stone. "Get away from her." Panic surged within Sarah, boiling her blood. She lunged forward, but the shadows seemed to reach, pulling her back like chains, whispering the dark secrets of the house. "Join us for dinner." He grinned, his smile stretching wider than humanly possible. The sight sent a jolt of terror through her, the recognition chilling her core. This wasn't just some man. It was a remnant of the horrors that festered in this cursed place, basking in their shadow's feast of fear. "Mia!" Sarah screamed again, trying to break free from the grip of darkness, struggling against the ancient power behind those doors. The shadows laughed, anticipating the ensuing chaos. In that moment, she remembered the words from the old record. Perhaps it wasn't just about escape. Perhaps the truth was the only weapon she could wield against them. "Don't you see?" Sarah shouted, forcing her voice through the tide of fear. "We're not afraid of you. We know what you've done." The air shifted, heavy with an unearthly stillness. The man's smile faltered, eyes narrowing. What had she awakened? Would the darkness retaliate? Sarah barely had time to brace herself for the fallout when the basement erupted. The shadows writhed, twisting and curling, reacting to her defiance. "Mia, we need to run," she commanded, reaching her sister, desperate to pull her from the corner. But as the shadows gathered their strength, a new dread sank in. What if the truth could shatter them, or unleash something far worse? What if exposing the truth only summoned the darkness further? The question lingered, chilling below the surface. As their twisted laughter crescendoed, Sarah's pulse quickened. She had awakened something, but she needed to understand it, to face it, before it took them both. Would they survive the night? And would the truth set them free or seal their fate forever? The shadows roared like a thunderstorm, filled with twisted echoes of laughter that sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. She turned towards Mia, who stood frozen, her eyes wide with desperate horror. The fear etched on her sister's face ignited Sarah's instinct to protect, to fight or flee. "Come on, Mia. We have to go." As the two girls moved, the thin man hissed, fangs glinting in the flickering light. "You think you can escape the truth?" His voice slithered through the air, a serpentine promise, coiling tighter around them. "You're too late. It's already inside you." The words stung like a slap, igniting a fresh wave of panic within Sarah. The basement felt alive, as if it were breathing alongside them, eager to consume every trace of hope. Shadows danced and flipped, hiding unseen horrors that crept closer. She grasped Mia's hand tightly, pulling her towards the staircase. They stumbled backwards, every nerve in Sarah's body tingling with warning. The thin man's laughter boomed, shaking the very walls of the basement. "You're part of it now, sweet girl," he crooned, his gaze piercing into her. Just like all the others, Sarah felt the panic rise in her throat like bile. The thought of being like the others, trapped forever in this cursed place, filled her with a primal fear. "Don't listen to him, Mia," she shouted, desperation clawing at her chest. "We can't let him win. Remember the stories Mom told us how courage can push back the dark?" A flicker of recognition passed over Mia's face. "The light. We need to find the light," she whispered, the determination seeping back into her tone. With a jolt of renewed purpose, they turned and sprinted back toward the staircase, feet pounding against the creaking wooden floors as the shadows writhed angrily. The thin man lunged forward, his laughter morphing into a shriek that echoed through the basement, shaking the very foundations of their reality. "Run, Sarah, run," Mia shouted, pulling her sister closer. The raw tension between them was electric, fueled by fear and survival. Reaching the top of the stairs, Sarah grasped the door handle, heart pounding violently against her ribcage. Would it open? She wrenched it down, praying against the dark presence behind them. The door swung open with a hesitant creak, but the staircase had become a void, shadows stretching up toward them like hungry hands. "Go, go," Sarah urged, shoving Mia through the doorway and following behind. But the moment her foot hit the upper hall, a ferocious force slammed the door shut, locking them inside. "Mia!" Sarah's cry pierced the silence. The air buzzed with anxiety, an electric hum buzzing just below their consciousness. "We need to find a way out." Mia's eyes scanned the area, searching for anything to guide them. "The attic," she yelled. "There's a way to the roof. We can escape from there." Together, they sprinted toward the back stairwell, their footsteps echoing against the wooden floors like frantic heartbeats. The closer they got, the more they could feel the shadows swirling around them, calling them back into their grasp. Cold, clammy fingers brushed against Sarah's skin, and she shivered, fighting the urge to look back. "Mia, don't stop." But as they climbed higher, the shadows grew thicker, the laughter more pronounced, until it morphed into a cacophony of cries, whispers, and yells. It was as if the past guests of the home were all warning them of the unspeakable truth behind those walls. With barely a breath, they reached the attic door, the wood warped and frail. Sarah could hear the whispers now, clearer, sharper, taunting, beckoning. "Mia, here." She shoved the door open, revealing a darkened space strewn with forgotten belongings, dust thick in the air. It was a graveyard of memories, long abandoned toys and crumbling photographs swirling with unseen sorrow. They raced to the window, the glass fogged with age. "Help!" they shouted together, voices mingling in the ethereal gloom. Desperation clawed at them as they looked out over the roof, an expanse of night stretching endlessly into the darkness. But just as they prepared to climb out, a chill slithered through the air, wrapping around them like an icy embrace. "Where do you think you're going?" The thin man lounged in the doorway, blocking their escape, shadows billowing like smoke around him. Heart pounding, Sarah and Mia moved instinctively toward the back of the attic, fear shifting to panic as they realized the exit was already surrounded. "What now?" Mia breathed, voice nearly a whisper, dread creeping back into her expression. Sarah's gaze darted around, the corners of the room closing in, threats hidden in every shadow. They had to find the light, whatever that meant. But would facing the truth reveal their salvation, or would it simply feed the darkness? One question loomed terrifyingly close. What kind of truth awaited them in this haunted attic? As they frantically searched for a way out, the shadows pulled closer, and the answer drew nearer. The air felt thick with dread, almost electric, as Sarah and Mia peered into the darkness of the attic. Shadows crept alongside them, pregnant with malice. Heartbeats echoed, loud and fast, nearly drowning out the whispers that sliced through the silence. "Mia, we need to think," Sarah said, voice trembling. Panic wove through her chest as she scanned the room, searching for anything that resembled hope, a beam of light, a hidden escape, anything. "Look!" Mia pointed at a dusty lantern perched precariously on an old trunk. Sarah rushed forward, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. She lifted it, instinctively knowing that lighting it could mean the difference between life and torment. As she squinted against the darkness, she fumbled for a matchbox, heart racing with desperation. But the thin man leaned against the doorframe, watching with predatory glee. "What do you think that will do?" he sneered, his fangs glinting like serrated blades caught in the dim light. The room felt smaller with him there, consuming what little air remained. "You're playing with forces far beyond your understanding." Mia gripped Sarah's arm, fear pooling in her eyes. "Just do it. We need the light." With shaking hands, Sarah finally struck a match. The tiny flame flickered to life, illuminating the faces of forgotten dolls, and cobweb-covered memories that loomed in the corners of the attic. Holding the match to the lantern, she felt a desperate surge of hope. The moment the lantern sputtered and flared bright, a wave of warmth surged through her, pushing back some of the shadows. But the thin man's eyes darkened. "You think a trinket can save you? The truth is in the dark, and you're too deep in to turn back now." The shadows shrieked and shrank back, but not for long. They twisted and coiled like snakes, hungry and restless, as if sensing their fear. Sarah felt the air chill again, an icy breath whispering through the attic, carrying her worst fear nothing would ever be the same again. "Mia!" she shouted, panic twisting the edges of her voice. "We need to find out what he means. What's the truth?" Suddenly, from the back of the attic, a sound emerged, a soft rustling, almost like a whisper, as if the very walls were speaking. Turning, they saw a small, ragged book lying half-hidden beneath the floorboards, dust muting its cover. It called to them, and in that moment, fear surged anew. "What if it's a trap?" Mia said, biting her lip, nervously glancing back at the thin man. "Or it might be our only chance," Sarah countered, glancing over her shoulder. He hadn't moved. "We're not gonna find the light without knowing what we're really dealing with." Gathering her courage, Sarah stepped closer to the book. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears as she knelt down, reaching for it, fingers brushing against the aged cover. The moment she touched it, a jolt surged through her hand. "No, you shouldn't." Mia's warning came too late. The attic exploded into chaos. The shadows screamed, swirling violently as the entire room shook, vibrating with rage. The thin man let out a guttural laugh that echoed like thunder, drowning out everything else. "Welcome to the truth." The book flew open, pages flipping wildly, each one revealing horrifying images. Faces twisted in despair, tortured souls caught in perpetual torment, eyes that seemed to plead for mercy yet remained forever trapped in darkness. As Sarah tried to pry her gaze away, a chilling realization gripped her. The faces, they looked familiar. They were echoes of those who had come before them, trapped just as they were frozen in fear, entangled in a fate they could have never escaped. "What is this?" Mia gasped, backing away, pulling Sarah with her. But it was too late. The attic enveloped them in its chaos. The shadows clawed at their heels, pulling them backward into the depths. "Close it, Sarah. Close it." Desperation swelled in Sarah's chest, and she struggled to shut the book, but the energy morphed, spitting threats mixed with longing. It tantalized her with the promise of the truth. "Run," she screamed. They stumbled back, everything falling apart around them, the shadows clawing at their sanity, wanting to reclaim what was theirs. And just as the end felt near, the ink swirled, letters twisting to spell out a single word that burned into Sarah's mind. "Tell." The lantern flickered violently, the light faltering. With its last whimper, what remained of hope quaked under the weight of that one directive. What did it want them to tell? In that moment of darkness, a new realization dawned. Faced with the hellfire of their cursed fates, would they take the plunge into the depths of truth, or succumb to the darkness they were so desperately trying to evade? As the shadows lunged, everything went black. What awaited them in the darkness? What truth would they need to unfold? The silence was intoxicating, dense and suffocating. Sarah was plunged into a void that felt infinite, yet time was slithering away, like sand slipping through her fingers. Her soul felt tethered to the shadows, entwined in a darkness that had breath and a pulse. Suddenly, she gasped, drawing a breath that felt heavier than stones. Mia's grip on her arm tightened. "Are you okay?" Panic danced in her eyes, but Sarah couldn't answer. All that filled her mind were the images from the book, raw and relentless. "Those faces, the book?" Sarah gasped, pulling Mia closer, searching for a shred of sanity in a sea of torment. They were binding us. Like a curse." "Shut it, please," Mia whimpered, trembling. "We have to get out of here." But the shadows had shifted, their shapes growing sharper, almost sentient, as if feeding off their desperation. They stretched toward Sarah and Mia, dark tendrils coiling in a rapturous dance of danger. Like fingers reaching from the depths, they beckoned, promising an unveiling of truths too grotesque to bear. "Tell," Sarah whispered, fear igniting her thoughts. "What does it mean, tell?" Without warning, a voice thrummed through the darkness, a hiss that seemed to intertwine with the shadows. "Tell the truth, and your suffering will cease." The thin man's laughter echoed, mingling with the dark whisper. "You think you'll escape? The truth is never free. It chains you to the whispers of your own dread." Each word sliced through the air, and the attic trembled in recognition of its malevolence. The shadows spiraled, growing denser as the weight of unsaid truths thickened around them. "Mia, the book!" Sarah shouted. "We must say it out loud." "What? This is insane." "Listen," Sarah urged, her heart drumming like an approaching storm. "What if it's our only chance? We can't remain silent." The shadows pulsed in response, thrumming dangerously close, eager for their answers. "What are you afraid of most?" The voice rasped, a cold wind whispering through a twisted truth. Mia's expression shifted toward despair. "I don't know, losing everyone, being trapped like them." Her breath quickened as she pointed to the void where shadowy faces writhed, pleading, almost human before their transformation into the grotesque. "I'm scared too," Sarah admitted, trembling. "But what if this is the way out? We have to set it free." The thin man stepped closer, malignant intrigue etched across his face. "Can you handle the truth? Speak her name, and its power will be yours. But remember, the price is steep." Mia's fear morphed into anger. "No, I refuse to be a part of this sick game. Sarah, let us just forget what we saw and find a way out." "But that's what it wants," Sarah pleaded, voice rising. "It wants us to run, to hide. We have to face it. Tell me your truth." In stark contrast, the shadows snapped and coiled, now morphing into something more sinister. Mia's face twisted in raw terror, the darkness closing in. "I can't do this. I can't." As if powered by their intentions, spectral hands shot out, grasping at their limbs, pulling them into shadows raging with relentless hunger. For every moment of hesitation, the walls around them pressed closer, suffocating, draining the last remnants of their hope. In one desperate motion, Sarah seized Mia's hands. "Let us do it together. We won't be alone. Say it with me." With mounting dread and defiance, they took a trembling breath, their hearts in rhythmic discord. "We tell our truth." But as they uttered the words, a blinding light surged from the lantern, enveloping everything. The shadows shrieked, contracting violently, as the thin man bellowed in anger, his face contorting into madness. Except the light had a price of its own. It revealed the darkness lurking beneath the truth they had feared. As it flooded the attic, the weight of unspoken connections unveiled the reality of what lay ahead. The faces of the damned twisted slowly, and with a final echoing cry, the thin man lunged, disappearing into the light. And then it stilled. The shadows retreated, revealing a passage through the now still air. A faint glimmer of an open door flickered at the end of the attic, a portal beckoning them into a realm of uncertainty and darker horrors. "Sarah," Mia stammered, horror mixing with dread. "What did we just unleash?" A final chill brushed against Sarah's skin, as if the attic itself held its breath. With terrified resolve, they edged toward the open door, the truth kicking at their heels. What lay beyond wouldn't be just shadows. It would expose the very fabric of their deepest fears. Would they dare step through? Their fate hung in the balance as they plunged into the unknown, leaving behind the remnants of their shattered reality. Would the truth be their salvation or their ultimate doom? The door creaked as Sarah pushed it open, the sound echoing like a mournful wail through the quiet attic. She hesitated, heart pounding, fists clenched. The light cast strange silhouettes that danced across the wooden beams above. What lay beyond felt alive, pulsing with a sinister energy that made her skin crawl. "Mia, do you really think we should go through?" she whispered, glancing back anxiously. "We can't stay here. We can't." Mia shook with fear, breath hitching. "We have to find out what happens next." Gritting her teeth, Sarah stepped across the threshold. The air shifted instantly, colder and heavier. They found themselves in a dimly lit corridor lined with peeling wallpaper that whispered with the ghosts of forgotten conversations. The faint smell of decay hung thick, mingling with the sweetness of something far too familiar, a scent of rotten memories. "Where are we?" Mia murmured, her voice trembling. A soft flicker of a light bulb overhead caught Sarah's attention, illuminating a door at the end of the hallway. Unfamiliar shadows wriggled at the corners of her vision, retreating whenever she turned to look. Intuition screamed at her to retreat, but a far darker compulsion pulled her forward. "Mia, let us check that door," Sarah finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "Are you crazy? It may be worse than, or it could lead us out." Sarah snapped, fear giving way to frustration. They were already here, standing on the edge of the abyss. What could be worse than becoming another shadow? As they approached the door, it swung open with a groan that made the floorboards beneath them tremble. They stepped inside a room that felt impossibly vast yet stifling. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dusty trinkets, cursed mementos from lives once lived. Each artifact seemed to hum with its own sorrow. A cracked mirror glinted in the darkness, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah swore she saw a figure standing behind her in its reflection. "Did you see that?" she gasped, spinning around. Mia's eyes widened, filled with a mixture of dread and disbelief. "What? There's no one right there. In the mirror." But only shadows stared back at them. Shaking her head, Sarah turned back, only to find the artifact shelves now vibrating slightly, as if breathing. Sarah realized they weren't alone. The accumulated weight of countless eyes watched them, lurking behind the masks of the objects. They could almost hear whispers, faint and teasing, like a choir of sins yearning to be heard. "Why do I feel like we're part of some twisted game?" Mia shivered. "Like we're being watched?" Just then, a loud thump echoed from the far side of the room, sending a jolt through Sarah's spine. The air shifted dramatically, the temperature dropping. From the shadows, a figure loomed, tall and shrouded in darkness, features obscured but dripping with menace. "Welcome," it rasped, the voice slithering into their ears. "You've come seeking the truth. Are you ready to pay the price?" Mia gasped, instinctively taking a step back, her hand tightening around Sarah's arm. "We have to leave. Now." But as they spun to flee, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The shadows began to swirl, thickening and choking the air with the weight of unearthly despair. "Tell your truth," the figure hissed, becoming more defined as its spectral form moved closer. "We don't want to play," Sarah screeched, panic washing over her. "Too late," it replied, an unsettling grin twisting its features. "The truth is already clawing at your minds. You must confront it or be consumed." The darkness condensed, forming grotesque shapes that reached out from the corners of the room. Faces of the lost twisted in agony, pleading for release. The shadows had teeth and they were hungry. Sarah's heart raced, and in that moment, she realized the truth was more than she had ever wanted to confront. But what choice did she have? "Together," Sarah yelled, determination igniting inside her again. "We speak it together. Maybe that's the only way out." Mia hesitated. "But what if we have to try? On three?" As they readied themselves, the shadows surged closer, pulling them into the waiting abyss. Their final chance slipped through their fingers. Will they find the courage to face their buried truths? Or will the shadows claim them? The shadows erupted around them, a tempest of despair and longing, as Sarah and Mia counted down, ready to unleash the truth they had buried deep. Two golden lights surged through their veins, an intense warmth juxtaposed against the coldness of the dark that loomed like a predatory beast. "Three," they spoke in unison, voices melding together, echoing through the darkness like a triumphant battle cry. "We are afraid of losing each other. We fear the darkness will consume us and turn us into something horrific. We fear we cannot escape what we truly are." Instantly, the room shook. Light exploded from the center, radiating outward in a blinding flash that pushed against the encroaching shadows. The figure in the darkness screeched, its form twisting in panic. The objects around them rattled violently, as if responding to the unleashed truths. Vibrating with power they hadn't known was contained within them. The shadows recoiled, for the truth, like a flickering beacon, burned brighter than their consuming darkness. The room became suffused with golden light, illuminating every haunting face that had once been obscured. "Mia," Sarah called, grasping her sister's hand tightly. "We're doing it. Don't stop." The shadows writhed and shrieked, battling against the truth's illuminating force. For every secret unveiled, the darkness lost its grip, retreating until it was a mere ghost of what it once had been. Slowly, the figure before them started to dissolve, melting away like wax in a fire. "You can't escape," it screeched, but its voice was now a whisper, disappearing into the illumination. For a moment, the air shifted, filling with a heady scent of roses and honey. The memories surrounding them were alive again, firing into the beautiful moments of lives once lived: smiles, laughter, warmth. The distortion of truth was disappearing, revealing fragmented glimpses of the residents who had once inhabited the nursing home. "I remember," Sarah breathed, spotting a woman amongst the shadows, her face suddenly bright with recognition. "Mrs. Thompson. She used to tell us stories. We used to sit on her lap." Mia's eyes glistened with tears. They just wanted to be remembered. They didn't wish to stay in this torment. With another surge of determination, the sisters united their voices again, calling out echoes of the memories they cherished, drawing strength from every shared moment, every laugh. "We remember you. You are not alone. You were loved." As the final words escaped their lips, a cascading wave of light engulfed them. The shadows screamed, swirling violently one last time before exploding into a myriad of glimmering sparkles, evaporating into the air, leaving behind a silence so profound it pulsated with life. Sarah and Mia stood in the empty room, heartbeats synchronized, catching their breaths as echoes of warmth lingered around them. The oppressive weight had lifted. The air felt lighter, electric with possibility. What just happened?" Mia whispered, eyes wide with amazement, as the remnants of their fears slowly began to dissolve into the air like fog under sunlight. "I think we broke the curse. At least for now," Sarah replied, hope mingling with disbelief. The door creaked open, a gentle invitation to the world outside. Without hesitation, they stepped through, their spirits buoyed by a newfound clarity. As they crossed the threshold, the ethereal glow of dawn greeted them, transforming the darkness into a vibrancy of colors. The sun rose over the horizon, banishing the shadows from the night. They stepped outside, hearts brimming with renewal. Together, they had faced the terrifying depths of truth and emerged with their bond stronger than ever. "Mia," Sarah said, squeezing her sister's hand tightly, "we're safe. We know what we're fighting against now. We can face anything together." As they walked away from the haunted halls of the retirement home, laughter bubbled between them. A promise of hope, a newfound understanding that shadows might linger, but they would never allow fear to take root again. The air shimmered with possibilities. They could write their own story. But as the memory of the darkness remained fresh in their minds, the shadows stirred far behind them, whispering promises of return. They had escaped this time, but the shadows were patient, waiting for their next chance. You need to subscribe now to our channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and support us. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. We can't wait to hear what you think. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything to us.